employees of Playtime Co. From 1930 to 1995, Playtime had thrived as a company and hired workers from all walks of life. Some of these workers had no idea about the Bigger Bodies initiative, while others had a huge role in establishing it. So whether they're the least popular or the most significant, we'll be discussing the employees and their importance in the Poppy Playtime franchise, starting off with the ones that may get overlooked. For example, Jimmy Roth was introduced to us in Chapter 2 through a VHS tape. Surprisingly enough, he's played by famous actor Eli Roth, who shares the same last name. Jimmy is the chief marketing officer of Playtime, and in his interview, he gives some insight into the company's strategies.
Jimmy, your work as Playtime Co.'s chief marketing officer has skyrocketed the company's profits. How do you do it?
You know, it's not what you'd expect. It's the little things most people don't even think about. Like, take names, for example. Expressview love and realize this. You take the E sound, slap it on the end of a name, boom, you're making bank. Huggy, Mommy. Even Elliot knew this way back with Poppy.
I guess I kind of...
Blue is huge, I'm telling you. What's your favorite color? Blue? I bet it's blue, right? It's blue?
It's green.
Okay, well, you're a special case. Most people would say blue. But seriously, marketing is not as easy as you think. I make it look easy. If there's anything Playtime Co. should be known for, it's not toys. It's marketing.
He seems to have a big ego and exceptional confidence in his skills. Roth emphasizes that Playtime should be known for marketing strategies rather than their toys, despite being a toy company. It shows that Roth believes the company's success comes from himself. Overall, the tape is pretty comedic, and Eli Roth does a great job at playing an incredibly snobby person, but he doesn't offer much lore-wise. Although the same can't be said for Rowan Stoll, a character that can't be found in any of the games, but rather through the Project Playtime ARG. Stoll is an intelligent employee who is head of technology, which seems like a position with a lot of power. However, there still wasn't much information that Rowan knew. He demonstrates his limited knowledge of the experiments through a series of tapes he recorded in 1991, the peak year of the Bigger Bodies initiative. Here, he notes some suspicion about Huggy Wuggy staring at the children with cameras in his eyes.
Hello, Mr. Pierre. Look, I know you don't want to hear any more about this. I get it. Sounds like a bad joke, Huggy Wuggy staring at children, but look, I'm filming this so I can hopefully prove what I saw. Look, if some creep is hiding nanny cams in our mascot's eyeballs, then it's something that needs to be taken seriously. You know, something dangerous is going on, and I'm sure it wasn't on purpose. I'm sure it was just some big mistake, but I saw what I saw, and I'm positive about that, and I know if you could see it too, I think you'll understand.
And despite his role in the company, Stoll still has to answer to head of innovation, Leith Pierre. Pierre also seems to make Stoll nervous, as we see in this next clip, in which Stoll completely backtracks his statement.
Mr. Pierre, I just want to apologize. I was wrong. Nothing weird is going on here at all. See, I talked to the maintenance guy, and he admitted that he had not done his due diligence maintaining Huggy, so his eyes probably just popped out of place. That must be what I saw. So I'm done. I'm not looking into it anymore. And I mean, not that there was anything to look into in the first place, but that's in the past. You won't be hearing anything else from me. So, sorry.
This video tells us two things. One, Rowan is a terrible liar, and two, he had found out some information about the Bigger Bodies initiative and pretended to remain oblivious for his own safety. However, it's during his third and final video log in which we learn that Stoll has realized the severity of the situation. He mentions that someone had tampered with his car and almost killed him on the freeway. For good reason, he believed this was a setup from Playtime due to his investigations. In the third tape, he would vow to release all of the company's vile secrets to the public.
For whoever's watching this, my name is Rowan Stoll. I work for Playtime Co. It's a massive toy company. They made Huggy Wuggy. They've been using all of the money they've made to experiment on people. I have proof of it all. Next week, I've scheduled the company's, the servers, the security to be shut down for 60 minutes of maintenance. While security is out, I'm going to release everything and run.
Oh, hello.
Stoll soon realizes that he is in danger of dying due to his forbidden knowledge. His respect for Pierre also decreases as he mentions that he's someone else entirely, alluding to the fact that Pierre played a huge role in these experiments and lacked humanity, doing whatever needed to be done to silence others. Unfortunately, Stoll would never have the opportunity to expose the horrors of Playtime Co. June 15th, 1991 would be the day that he enters a secluded area of the factory. He eerily walks up to a large jack-in-the-box, which happens to be Boxy Boo. And if you're familiar with this creature, then you already know that this story doesn't end well, because after walking up to Boxy Boo, he eats him in one whole bite. And Stoll wasn't heard from ever again. In fact, his whole entire existence seemed to be erased from Playtime. But he wasn't the only minor character to have a negative experience with a bigger body. In Chapter 3, we're introduced to Claire Harper through the first VHS tape of the game. Harper worked in Home Sweet Home as a counselor, always around Catnap, who released the red smoke amongst sleeping orphans. In this tape, she details the outburst of a girl named Mary Payne.
I could feel the poor little heart pounding. For her, it was right there. And her movements, they were so wild. Arms flailing, legs kicking. I wanted to talk to her, see how she's doing. I really need to hear her voice right now.
That would not be advised, Miss Harper. There are many concerns we must address at this time. But vitals show normal, and we'll continue to monitor. She'll be okay.
No! Well, pardon me if I'm not comforted by that.
Harper seems to care about these orphans a lot, especially Marie, as if she were her own daughter. But Harper's contribution to the research makes you wonder how much she actually cared. It's also possible that Harper did her work in observatory rooms located around the home, in which researchers could look through a one-way glass and examine children. Harper was actually first introduced through the Chapter 3 ARG, as it includes an incident report written by her. It essentially tells the same story from the tape, but with a few added details. We learn that during Marie's outburst, 3 employees had to hold her down. She also guesses that the cause of this outburst was due to the fact that she was recently getting teased by other orphans. We now know that it was caused by the red smoke, so perhaps Harper doesn't know as much as other employees. Another worker who's pretty oblivious to the horrors of Playtime is Rich Avery, a man who worked in the shipping sector of the factory. He's been featured in every chapter so far, and one thing that remains consistent are his anger issues.
Just hard to be happy about it when manufacturing's on our necks about it, because we can't fight stupid Huggy Boxes. Because the next day I got demoted down here to the freaking island of misfit toys. Christ!
In Chapter 3, Rich has the chance of getting promoted as his superior Stewart is stepping down and looking for a replacement. For many, Rich is a running candidate for who the player could be. The theory goes that after being promoted and working his way up the factory, he could have become a part of the Bigger Bodies Initiative, and due to his guilt, returned 10 years later as the player. However, one character that we know for sure had a hands-on role in experimentation is the Scientist. This employee doesn't have a name, but is also featured in all 3 chapters. In the first tape, he's heard recording his last log before being killed during the Hour of Joy. In the second, he reviews the prototype's skills as he goes over his attempt at escaping the labs. In Chapter 3, his log involves research on a boy named Joseph, although mid-speech, he ends up getting interrupted by his friend, Kevin.
Subject is stable, designated 1322. Clear neural abnormalities were detected in his recent checkup, though highly irregular. We've pulled him from the home sweet home just before lights out to perform...
What is he doing with my friend?
What are you doing out of bed? How did you get in here?
Is Kevin sick? Why did you take him away?
Yes. Kevin is very sick. Very, very sick. But we want to make him better. But he can only get better if we take him to where we can provide proper care and give him proper rest.
The clip shows that the Scientist is very impatient with the children, making the overall experimentation process even more unbearable for its subjects. It's not confirmed what toy Joseph was turned into, but what we do know is that the Scientist had psychopathic tendencies much like Harley Sawyer. Sawyer became the evil mad scientist of Chapter 3 and was obsessed with the prototype and how he functioned. He's also the one who came up with the idea of the Bigger Bodies Initiative.
The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys. We can increase our workforce and simultaneously decrease the number of lawsuits and people on our payroll if the people we have working aren't people.
Although he's a new character, he plays a huge role in the lore of the story, especially when it comes to revealing the prototype's mimicking skills. In fact, he's now considered one of the higher-up employees of Playtime in the same likeness as Eddie M.N. Ritterman. Ritterman is known to be the head of research, and in Chapter 2, we see his name on a higher-up slide. We also find a letter that he wrote on behalf of Playtime, authorizing Warrenbach Construction to build a laboratory in the factory, stating, quote, "We'd still like to see the lab completed in 12 months' time, but what's important is that it's done right," meaning that it's completed in sworn secrecy. Another major employee who would value secrecy is Leith Pierre, head of innovation. Pierre is introduced to us when we first enter the factory in Chapter 1, explaining that we have breached the security system.
If you're seeing this, then you're trespassing. Yeah, we play this little tape on loop whenever we close the factory for the day. So, trespasser, just to make you aware, while we pride ourselves primarily on our high-quality toys and excellent child care, we also pride ourselves on our security. For example, this facility is full of hidden motion triggers, which, once set off, will turn on the factory's emergency alarms and directly contact the authorities. And that's one of the more tame aspects of our security system.
And since security is extremely important to Playtime, we know that Pierre played a huge role in the factory. In fact, the hidden Huggy cameras mentioned by Rowan Stoll were most likely approved by Pierre himself. And we know that he's willing to do whatever it takes for the experiments to be confidential, even if it means censoring other employees. This can be seen as he interviews Marcus Brickley, a Playtime employee played by Jacksepticeye, who saw something that he wasn't supposed to.
So, I I took a peek beneath the gate, and some massive bloody thing was doddering about the bloody hallway.
Thing? You're sure it wasn't a person?
He's no person that's 50 feet long with 1,000 legs.
Marcus, you're losing me. Maybe you just saw a bunch of people walking by.
Look, it wasn't people, alright? I haven't a bloody notion what it was, but it wasn't human.
Who have you told about this? Besides me, obviously.
Just you, sir. Obviously.
Okay. I'll have security skim the cameras and take a look.
What? There's a massive bloody monster! Skimming ain't gonna get rid of it!
You're out of line, Marcus. We make toys, not monsters. Now come on, get out of my sight. Actually, grab me a coffee, will you? Actually, never mind. Get out of my sight.
Not only does Pierre lie to Marcus, but he also rudely dismisses him, which shows his true character. He most likely spoke down to lower level employees often to boost his own ego and prevent them from snooping around. Another important thing to note about Pierre is that his job description varied greatly. He managed security, disciplined staff, and had a hand in the labs. For example, he's Sawyer's replacement and speaks to Catnap while he's out, which means that Head of Innovation also has deep roots in experimentation. And in the restricted disappearance video, a document is seen at the end going over the grim reality of Huggy's attempted escape. It's signed by Leith Pierre himself, which shows his advanced role in the Bigger Bodies initiative. Another employee with high clearance is Stella Graber, who was head of Playcare and also deeply involved in the game station.
Hi kids, welcome to the game station. I'm Stella, and we've got 3 super duper fun games to play.
Stella was a character of interest in Chapter 1, theorized to be Poppy due to her obsession with toys and immortality.
I could go straight from my bedroom floor to anywhere in the world. It was such a great feeling. And being able to work at a toy factory, somewhere that can provide kids with that same experience, that's a pretty great feeling too. Sometimes though, I really wish I could go back. To being a kid, I mean. And it's weird, because adults are just kids, but older. I don't think anyone ever really feels like an adult, but your body just gets older and older, and then you die. Poof! Human bodies just can't stay young forever. There's things though, like some trees that can stay alive even while being way older than a person. I mean, the oldest people to ever live are still younger than those. So I guess everyone is always young relative to something, right?
Alright, I think we're getting a little off track.
In Chapter 3, we see more of her role as head of Playcare when she speaks with a couple ready to adopt. Although things don't go as planned, the adoptee, Jeremy, was assigned to testing, and this made the couple extremely upset. Graber seems to not know about the severity of the situation. However, it's been confirmed that this isn't true due to a cross-department reports found in the Chapter 3 ARG. She writes, "When the children first saw this Bigger Bodies catnap, half of them were terrified. The good news is that in the time since, many of the children have warmed to him. I still have reservations about how he's used, but I admit his overall impact on Playcare operations has been a positive one." So Graber did know about the Bigger Bodies initiative, but was also not very fond of Catnap, possibly because she sensed suspicions about him due to his diligence to the prototype. And of course, we can't talk about the higher up employees without mentioning the founder, Elliot Ludwig. He founded the company in 1930 and created Poppy in the 1950s. Whenever he's featured in the game, he has a very kind and endearing demeanor, someone who deeply cared for children.
A smile is hope. A smile is love. A smile is understanding. And there is nothing more gratifying to my soul than being the reason for a child's smile. to be the spark that ignites all their hopes and dreams. For it is only through hopes and dreams that we may create a better world.
But of course, there's some speculation about how wholesome Ludwig actually was when his company tortured helpless orphans. And this doesn't get any better when we find out that the body of a child was found on his premises. While Playtime Co. didn't believe that Ludwig was capable of such a thing and tried to defend him, neighbors did report that he exhibited strange behaviors such as coming home during weird hours of the night. This could possibly be related to the familial death that he experienced in the 1960s, which caused him to spiral into insanity. And it's a running theory among the community that the prototype is actually Elliot Ludwig. But if you want to learn more about Ludwig and his links to the prototype, then feel free to check out one of my Who is the prototype? Introduced to us as Subject 1006, the prototype is still a huge mystery. He's been the main driving force behind each chapter so far, and in order to fully understand who he is, we must start from the very beginning. In the 1930s, a man named Elliot Ludwig had a dream to spread happiness to children across the world. So he created his very own toy company named Playtime. In the year 1950, however, things would really begin to take off as Poppy Playtime was created, a doll with high intelligence that could talk back to children. She was a big success, so much to the point where Playtime would be able to give factory tours to the general public, and people really enjoyed it. Everything was looking great for Ludwig. His company was growing in size, and he had more and more people working for him. But things would take a turn once he suffered from a tragic familial loss in the 1960s. Around the same time, Ludwig decided to experiment with rats and Poppy Joe, observing the potential revival properties that it possessed, but the experiment failed. It was concluded that it would be more successful with larger specimens. At the same time, a man named Harley Sawyer became a part of Playtime Co. as a sort of mad scientist. It was around the 80s to 90s that he would propose the Bigger Bodies Initiative, creating gigantic creatures from human subjects to help with the labors of running a toy factory.
When I look at this company we've built, I do not feel proud. Declining profits, failed experiments, people are constantly seeing things they shouldn't. How is that anything less than complete failure on our part? It's pathetic. Now we're understaffed, safety protocols are being abandoned, workplace incidents are common. We can't avoid a lawsuit forever. We need to deal with all of these issues at once. I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys. We can increase our workforce and simultaneously decrease the number of lawsuits and people on our payroll if the people we have working aren't people.
Sawyer saw this as an opportunity to receive more labor for a cheaper cost. This would not only maximize profit, but also strengthen security measures around the factory. And with this, staff as well as orphans from the company's adoptive initiative would be taken and turned into bigger bodies, molded to become servants for Playtime Co. It's unclear when Ludwig died, but at this time there wasn't much heard from him, as Sawyer seemed to be the main one running the show. The first successful bigger body was probably Subject 1006. He was extremely intelligent and the ideal candidate for the initiative. We don't know much information about this creation, but we do know that he possessed skill and intellectual capacity beyond any other. But with the constant experimentation, torture, and never-ending agony, the prototype couldn't take it anymore. So he decided to devise a plan. He studied the scientists as well as the equipment they used to lock him up in the lab and tried to make an epic escape.
A close call occurred this week in which he nearly breached containment. The prototype seemingly disassembled the digital alarm clock within his room and utilized the battery, along with several other components, to create a laser pointer, which he then fired into the security camera, disabling it. These actions allowed him 28.3 seconds completely unmonitored. Once function returned to the camera, the room appeared to be empty. One surveillance specialist went in to confirm his absence.
Unfortunately, the specialist would die after being attacked by 1006, who hid in a blind spot. However, another specialist would be able to lock him in and ruin his escape plan. This seems to be the very first time that the prototype tried to pull a stunt like this, and from then on, scientists knew to keep a close eye on him. It's important to note that at this point, 1006 had to be a smaller specimen if he was able to hide behind a blind spot. But this would soon change. After the casualty, the scientists continued to closely monitor the prototype due to his overwhelming violent tendencies. Nevertheless, they still recognized his great intelligence and decided that it would be best to keep experimenting on him, using suppression treatments to keep him in check. So the torture only got worse. On the other hand, subject 1170, aka Huggy Wuggy, seemed to be an obedient specimen, which was true to a certain extent. See, throughout his time being trapped in the labs, the prototype began planning something big. Somehow, he began communicating with other toys in the factory, stirring up the resentment for Playtime employees and encouraging them to fight for their freedom. One of these toys happened to be Huggy Wuggy. The prototype was able to exploit his obedience for a bigger plan. It was at this time that he encouraged Huggy to escape the facility and run to freedom, which he did. After leaving the factory, he ended up running back to a house that seemed familiar to him. And while he didn't kill any employees right off the bat, he ended up only attacking when they started throwing darts at him. And the obedient Huggy Wuggy ended up turning into a violent monster under the persuasion of the prototype. While staff ended up returning the bigger body, there was a casualty of 5 workers and 6 missing. Meanwhile, Harley Sawyer was enjoying every single minute of exploring 1006. He saw something in this creature, a certain potential that made him ecstatic. He refused to stop any research, even with the pleas and cries of the test subjects.
Log code 24459. In relation, Experiment 1006. The prototype. Stubborn as he is, and always silent with each passing session, I'm still uncovering fresh data nonetheless. Today's discovery... End of log.
Ready to talk now, are you? I possess
a question.
Go ahead.
Do you feel anything?
This question referred to what exactly?
You stick us, beat us, tear at flesh.
Do you feel it? There's a secret inside you, 1006. Valuable beyond all measure. I cut and prod and burn at it. And I get closer with each session. So speak. Or don't. Fight. Or give in. Regardless, I learn something new about you every day. It excites me. Thank you. You thank me? Absolutely. I learn something new about you every day.
Now, this tape is extremely important because it introduces the mimicking ability that the prototype has. With everyone he comes into contact with, he learns more about them and is able to imitate them down to a T. But this will come back later. Around the same time, 1006 would befriend a lonely orphan named Theodore Granbell. He even drew a drawing of him and the prototype's hand creepily sneaking under his bed. Staff would assure him that the friend was just imaginary, but they couldn't have been further from the truth. One day, 1006 would tell Theodore to steal a grab pack and an electric hand, possibly with intentions to escape the factory, but Theo ended up getting electrocuted and severely injured. It was at this point that there was so much misbehavior coming from Theodore that the Playtime Co. staff decided to turn him into Catnap, possibly saving his life. And even though Theo was turned into a completely new being, he continued to side with the prototype and eventually deified him, killing anyone who wouldn't follow his ways. So remember that thing that the prototype was planning? Well, it arrived on August 8th, 1995, and he would call it the Hour of Joy. See, 1006 was tired of the constant pain, agony, and suffering that was afflicted upon him and the other subjects. But every day, he had been carefully studying the behavior and mannerisms of the workers, from the exact time they clocked in to when they clocked out, how they used their security systems, performed experiments, and how they spoke and interacted with each other. At the same time, he was also communicating with other bigger bodies. While it's unclear exactly how he did this, we know that he was able to round up a large number of toys and get them to participate in the Hour of Joy, a time when all of the oppressed subjects would rebel against the repressors and slaughter them in the name of freedom. There was a lot of prep work done for the event. Even instructions to transport toys were tampered with to jumpstart the Hour of Joy. And during Kissy's relocation tape, we can see scratches reminiscent of the prototype's hand on her wooden board, and the massacre would begin. It could have started with 1006 disabling security systems like he had done prior, or maybe he just started attacking the first employee who entered his cell and continued on from there. But the truth is, we don't know how the event started or ended, how it came to fruition, or how many subjects were involved. What we do know, however, is that it was successful. The chaos can even be heard in a VHS tape by a mysterious scientist in Chapter 1, encouraging the listener to forge onwards in the name of science, despite being killed seconds later.
Experiment 1006, the prototype. Coordination and cooperation is evidently within his skill set, as well as the skill set of all other experiments of his type. Though still missing, today's events are no doubt in relation to him. His absence was a flaw in the scientific process, which should have under no circumstances been left unaccounted for. That's why I'm making this log, so that the same mistake won't be made twice. Any future experiments will need to be contained and disposed of in a secure location. I'm not worried about myself. One breakthrough and I'll be back. We must forge onwards in the name of science, whether those who are beneath us understand it or not. End of...
It makes you wonder what the scientific flaw was that made 1006 how he is. But anyway, we also know that the prototype locked Poppy in her case, probably because she didn't agree with his plan. And we finally have reached present day. We play as an ex-employee in the factory who came back 10 years later. And the toys haven't left, which is strange because the Hour of Joy was supposed to be a precursor for freedom. Huggy, who was previously adamant to escape, was just chilling in the main lobby. Mommy Longlegs was still in the game station, but this is when we receive a clue as to what the prototype could be arranging this time. In Chapter 2, when putting Mommy in the grinder, she says this iconic line.
You make me part of you! You can't do this to me!
And after she's dead, a big metal skeletal hand reaches out under the gate and drags her body away. implying that 106 uses the body parts of different toys to build himself a bigger body, which is also weird because he's essentially doing to the toys what the scientists did to him all those years ago. After the incident, Poppy makes it clear that she's against the prototype and everything he stands for, and in chapter 3, it's more evident that the toys are very divided when it comes to 1006. Sure, he has a whole army at his disposal ready to kill us, but there's also a group of toys who don't succumb to his will, like the rest of the Smiling Critters and Kissy Missy. Also at this time, we can conclude that the prototype is getting larger and larger as he collects more parts. And by observing Catnap's makeshift shrine, we kind of have an idea of what he could possibly look like. But even the prototype's most loyal subjects aren't safe from him, as Catnap is sacrificed at the end of chapter 3. This also tells us that 1006 has eyes and ears everywhere. He knows the exact time and place to snatch Catnap's body. This is why many people thought that the prototype was posing as Ollie, because of Ollie's knowledge and all-seeing eye paired up with the prototype's ability to mimic voices. With this though, there are some lingering questions about 1006 and how he carried out the Hour of Joy. For starters, how did he round up so many toys to be his servants? These bigger bodies were under heavy security, and when they weren't with the children, they were locked up in the labs. So communication had to have been limited. Also, the prototype was isolated for most of his creation. So how could he have spoken with the other toys? Well, it's possible that he was able to use two unique powers to his advantage: voice mimicking and mind control. With his voice, he could have pretended to be different employees, telling another worker to leave their room and go somewhere else, giving him time to escape and spread messages to other toys. But I think that mind control might be the most important of the two. When we meet Dog Day for the first time, he says this:
"We'll try to fight it. The prototype's control. I am the last of the Smiling Critters."
Trying to, quote, fight the prototype's control alludes to the idea that he could possibly get into the minds of toys. Still not convinced? Well, in Project Playtime, when playing as Huggy Wuggy, you'll hear this dark, ominous voice that tells you what to do.
The others are hungry. The others are starving. Get up. They are trying to build more toys, more like you. It has to be stopped.
In this instance, it seems like the prototype is talking to Huggy in his own head, as he's nowhere near him in the actual game, and Huggy follows his every command. This is how he was able to acquire an army for the Hour of Joy. Also, notice the first 3 sentences. The others are hungry. The others are starving. Get up. Does that sound familiar to you? In the Poppy Playtime death screens, we get introduced to cryptic messages like this all the time. In fact, these lines correlate a lot with this coded message in chapter 2, which translates to "they're hurt, hungry, get up." And the words "get up" are in almost every death message, plus they're in all caps, same as the Project Playtime dialogue. So if the prototype can get into the head of toys like Huggy Wuggy, does that mean that we, the player, are also a bigger body because he's in our head? But that's a theory for a different video. So who is the prototype? Every bigger body was a human at first, and it's no different for 1006. What if the leader of the Resentful Toys was also the leader of Playtime Co? Yes, I'm suggesting that Elliot Ludwig is the prototype. Ludwig established the company in 1930, and the prototype is estimated to be created in the late 80s and 90s. Ludwig would be pretty old by then, considering the fact that he had to be an adult in 1930 when Playtime was created. So the creation of the prototype would line up with the date of Ludwig's death, probably around 90 years old. Involuntary staph isn't a completely new phenomenon, as Thomas Clark, a 59-year-old Playtime employee, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and agreed to be turned into Brawn the dinosaur. Ludwig's motivation for being turned into the prototype also makes sense when you look at his familial tragedy. It's been theorized that it was his daughter whom he lost, which caused him to obsess over bringing back the dead. And eventually, he was able to transport his daughter's soul in Poppy Playtime. At the end of his life, he didn't want to be separated from her, so he vowed to live eternally with his daughter in the form of the prototype. But when Harley Sawyer took over, Ludwig realized he made a grave mistake, leaving the company with a literal psychopath. He had become masochistic with his research, and this was the exact opposite of what Ludwig wanted for Playtime. So the Hour of Joy was certainly a revenge story, not just for getting back at evil employees, but also cursing Harley Sawyer for completely flipping the morals of the company on his head, soiling the reputation of Elliot Ludwig. And it seems like it worked, as Sawyer is presumed to be dead right before the Hour of Joy.
Hey, Theo. How you doing, bud? Normally I'd have Dr. Sawyer do this, but he's, out, let's say. So you got me until they find his replacement.
But what theories do you guys have about the prototype? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on the video. Chapter 3 of Poppy Playtime is on the brink of being open to the public, but what new info do we have on it that could shed some light on when it can be coming out? The game's second trailer has yet to drop, so we would of course have to wait for that to be released to get our hands on the actual game. But who's to say the devs won't release both at the same time? The devs have proved to be the type of team that like to surprise their audience, and although it wouldn't make sense and it would be very unlikely for them to do something like this, I wouldn't be that much surprised if it were to happen. However, we do have some new info from the Poppy Playtime Discord server that might help us determine when we'll be able to have the new content. In my last video, I explained how Zach Bellinger, the CEO of Mob Entertainment, said to someone in the server that the game would not be coming out in February or March after being asked about it. Now, he could have just said that the game was coming out this month, but I think he's trying to keep everything uncertain and a surprise for everyone to raise the hype just a little bit more. However, my prediction was that the game and the trailer would be coming out in 2 weeks at most, or before the start of February. But recently, Zach has been posting some GIFs and interacting with the people in the server. So today, I'm going to be talking about what these GIFs could possibly mean for the release of the trailer and the game. For starters, it's shown that Zach likes to be friendly with his audience and pokes fun at the fact that everyone keeps asking for when everything will be coming out, as his first GIF is seen to be someone saying executives coming through, and of course after this, a bunch of people started asking him about the game. But not even a minute later, Zach posts another GIF that says, "All good things to those who wait." And this could mean a bunch of things. Firstly, this could mean that we are literal days away from getting either the trailer, the game, or both. And my reason for this is, why would Zach start to post in the server if things are nowhere near being done? He's not as active as the other devs, so there has to be some other reason as to why he's active now. And this could be that the game is very, very close to being released. Second, there's a possibility that this means that things could be pushed back a bit, but Zach is just reassuring us by letting us know that the wait will be worth it. However, I think the first reason is a lot more likely to happen, as it's been pretty clear that things are very likely to drop either this week or next week. Moreover, on the fact that Zach likes to poke fun at his audience, he posted this GIF 2 minutes later, which is actually something from the first chapter of Poppy Playtime, from when you first pick up the grab pack and put its VHS tape into the cassette player, and a video will come on about how to use the grab pack. And during the video, it says said to not fire it at a coworker as it may cause injury, and this was shown. Pretty weird to have this in an instructions video, but that's besides the point. The next GIF that Zack posts is a response to someone asking if anything will happen to the character Kissy Missy. Now, I don't know where this is from, but it looks like Lord of the Rings, but the guy in the GIF looks to be sad or disappointed, which might be Zack hinting at the fact that something does happen to Kissy Missy and it'll be a sad experience for the player. Now, there's still some speculation as to if Kissy Missy is a good character, as in chapter 2 she seemed to be helping us with one of the puzzles. During one of the scenes, we're trying to get past a gate and a door opens and Kissy Missy comes out and walks towards the gate. She looks at us and cocks her head to the side, trying to understand what our objective is, and once she realizes that the lever is what we need to continue, she pulls it down for us, gives us one last look, and walks away. And honestly, just by the way she grabs the lever, you can tell that whatever or whoever is inside this thing doesn't have full familiarity with its body. As you can see, you're having to grab the lever again after failing the first time. As well, in the first trailer, you can see that Poppy is on Kissy Missy's shoulder while talking to us.
So we can get revenge on those monsters who've tortured you, who've tortured us.
Confirming that she will be an ally in this upcoming chapter, and there'll be something happening throughout the game that will lead to us meeting her again and actually figure out what's going on with her. But going back to the GIFs, the next one that Zack posts is a scene from the movie Wolf of Wall Street, where Leonardo DiCaprio is playing as the scammer Jordan Belfort. Judging from the GIF, he looks to be irritated, probably relating to everyone asking about when chapter 3 will drop. Even after the previous GIFs being sent and all of the devs telling everyone to wait, people are still persisting on getting any type of info on when chapter 3 will release. And I'm thinking that since Zack decided to start interacting with the people in the server a bit more, this might be a sign as to how close we are to getting to chapter 3. It was said a couple days ago that the trailer was in its final stages, so right now it's probably all finished, and Mob Entertainment is just waiting for the hype to build up just a bit more before releasing it. Or they could be waiting for chapter 3 to be completely finished with its final touches as well, so when everything drops, they won't have to worry about optimization issues, bugs, glitches, and exploits. There are people on the team who are designated game testers though, where they ensure that not only the game is in high quality, but it actually runs as intended. I think Mob is trying their best to make everything as perfect as possible, as to not have the entire chapter flop because of some performance issues or just ways to break the game. If you remember what happened in the very first chapter, there was a bunch of FPS drops, stuttering, and a bunch of lag going on in the game for seemingly no reason, and this was probably due to the fact that the game had a bunch of unoptimized assets. But now that the game is going to be available to play on console pretty soon, and it's been out for a couple of years, it's pretty safe to say that they're starting to get a handle on making everything run smoothly now, and they might just be making sure that everything works accordingly, and that could be the reason that everything is taking so long. So with that being said, if we were to go off of this assumption, we might have a good idea as to when we'll get our hands on the game. As said in my previous video, the game could be dropping any minute now, and I honestly would not be surprised if they dropped everything at like 3:42 in the morning. But with how much people are anticipating this upcoming chapter, it's very easy for a development team to get caught up in having everything be perfect, as to not ruin the reputation of the team. But one thing is for sure, we will have our hands on the game extremely soon, and it's only a matter of time before all of our questions will be answered. As Zack said, good things come to those who wait, and it's been clear that we will be able to play chapter 3 before the end of the month, so it's just best to wait it out and be on the lookout for when things start to drop. I understand as a fan of the game that it is very frustrating to not have any accurate info as to when you'll be able to play it, but all of this waiting might prove to be a good decision from the dev team. They already pushed the chapter back into this year since it just wasn't ready yet, and that was a great move on their part, because if they were to stick with the original date and rush everything, this game would flop hard. But even as I make this video, there's still a bunch of people trying to get an answer out of the devs in the Discord server, and there are also people making fan versions of Chapter 3. It's no secret that the lore of Poppy Playtime runs deep, and it might be confusing to keep track of all the toys and where they fit on a timeline. So let's go over the history of the characters and when they were created. Poppy Playtime is the oldest toy in the franchise that we know of. She's a porcelain doll created in 1950 that served as a preview for Playtime's interest in fusing life with toys. Poppy was made specifically to have conversations with young girls, something that was far beyond the technology of that time. And these weren't just pre-recorded lines from her voice box. She was actually responding to whatever was being said to her. This is pretty interesting because it shows that Playtime's experience with bringing toys to life predates Harley Sawyer and the Bigger Bodies initiative. While we weren't sure if the Poppy in the commercial is the same Poppy that we encounter in the game, we do know that this toy was Playtime's big break. Poppy allowed for the company to receive attention and notoriety from all across the country due to their groundbreaking technology. Her design was also aesthetically pleasing to children. She had curly red hair that would remain sturdy, a blue dress, and shoes that needed to be shined. Her hair also smelled like poppies, which served as foreshadowing for the red smoke. It's unclear if Playtime Co. was experimenting with children this early, but it definitely supports the idea of Experiment 814, in which Elliot Ludwig used poppy gel on rats to examine its properties. It's theorized that Poppy is actually the daughter of Ludwig. Transferring her soul into a toy would be a way to make her live forever after she tragically lost her life. And Mob makes it clear from the very beginning that there's a human inside of her. For starters, she says lines like this:
I'm a real girl, just like you.
When observing Poppy's eyes, you can clearly see veins, making them appear almost bloodshot. And of course, in the Poppy maintenance tape, when taking out her voice box, it's covered in blood. Another eerie detail about the tape is that in the beginning, she's not facing the camera, but at the end, she's staring directly at us. This comes right after a screen that flashes the words, "Let me go," a plea to free her from torture. But nothing would come of this, as Playtime Co. would continue to carry out questionable operations. Soon after, Playtime would come into the picture, and it's possible that this is when Miss Delight was created. When Ludwig first introduced Playcare through the VHS tape on Elliot's Express, he didn't sound very old, but rather closer to his narration in the Poppy commercial that was released in 1950. But if we look at Miss Delight's clothing, we can see that it looks a bit older than the 1950s. It's unsure when she was created, but if it was around the same time as Playcare, then along with Poppy, it would make her much older than other creations. There were at least 7 other teachers that resembled Miss Delight, but their end would come in 1995. But way before that, another toy was created in 1966, and that was Boxy Boo. Although his toy wasn't as successful as others. 18 years after his release, however, Playtime would finally strike gold in 1984 with the creation of Huggy Wuggy, and sales would skyrocket. Playtime decided to capitalize on this success by creating Kissy Missy in 1985, essentially the female version of Huggy. But while everything seemed innocent on the surface of Playtime Co., things started to get sketchy. Probably around the late 80s to early 90s, the prototype, or Experiment 1006, was created. He's thought to be the very first successful experiment meant to kick off the Bigger Bodies Initiative. Established by Harley Sawyer in 1991, it was seen as a way to create subservient labor for a cheaper cost, all while avoiding debt and lawsuits. If workers weren't actual people, then it would solve a lot of problems, according to Sawyer. The weird thing about the prototype is that we don't know what he's supposed to be. The rest of the Bigger Bodies that came after were based off Playtime merchandise, while this one is still unknown, much like his appearance. The prototype also didn't need any food to survive, which was very different from other experiments to come. He also exhibited violent behaviors and was kept under a close eye by scientists. But it was clear that 1006 had outwitted every employee and was planning something big. Something that would completely destroy the Bigger Bodies Initiative, but it was just getting started. Even though Boxy Boo wasn't as successful as his toy counterparts, he was still deemed useful in the name of science. Considered to be the first successful Bigger Body, Boxy Boo, aka 1160, would be in charge of getting rid of employees who knew a little bit too much. For example, Rowan Stoll discovered the horrific secrets of Playtime and documented his journey, promising to reveal all of it. But in 1991, he ended up getting eaten by Boxy Boo, never to be heard from again. Experiment 1160 is also known to possess enhanced mobility. While playing as Boxy in Project Playtime, you can jump over barriers and travel around the map with maximum efficiency. He also has quick jabs, a function which allows you to attack subjects with ease. All in all, Boxy Boo is a very capable toy with many different abilities. It's no wonder that Harley Sawyer marveled in his greatness.
The 1st of May, naturally. You have proven my Bigger Bodies Initiative a success. Many doors have opened today, thanks to you. Now, we need to start taming that appetite of yours to flesh. Where to start?
This clip also tells us that Boxy didn't always want to eat other people, but he was trained to, which makes you wonder if he could have been a friendly companion in Project Playtime. But with science on their side, the company was able to mold Boxy Boo into the perfect monster, wreaking havoc for anyone who got in his way. But this was only part of something much worse. Huggy and Kissy's Bigger Bodies would be created in 1991, and while we don't know Kissy's experiment number, we know that Huggy was 1170. For the Bigger Bodies Initiative, Huggy's role involved security. In one of Rowan Stoll's VHS tapes, he indicates that Huggy seems to have cameras in his eyes, watching the children.
If some creep is hiding nanny cams in our mascot's eyeballs, then it's something that needs to be taken seriously.
This, however, wouldn't be the only problem involving Huggy. On July 18th, 1992, 1170 would somehow successfully escape the factory. It took a while for the team to go after him, but their attempt wouldn't come without sacrifices. After being shot at with darts, Huggy would target his attackers. There were 11 casualties, 5 either missing or dead. And after running to a familiar home, Huggy was captured and taken back to the factory by workers who were still alive. Prior to this incident, by 1 to 3 years, Playtime decided to produce their own lineup of toys called the Smiling Critters. They were animal plushies that consisted of Bobby Bear Hug, Bubba Bubbaphant, Kick It Chicken, Crafty Corn, Picky Piggy, Dog Day, and Catnap. The line was so successful that it even had its own cartoon. Catnap's plush, however, was recalled due to the mysterious gas that it pumped, making children across the country have violent nightmares. It's unsure how close this recall was to the release of the toys, but we do know that Catnap's story was far from over. His bigger body was created in the early 90s from an orphan named Theodore Grambel. Under the influence of the prototype, Theo decided to steal a grab pack and escape, but ended up injuring himself so bad that the only way to save him was to transition into a toy. And we can assume that the bigger bodies of the smiling critters were also made around the same time. But Catnap would isolate himself from the others, still under the influence of 1006. Dog Day and the rest of the smiling critters didn't really agree with the prototype and formed a sort of resistance to him. Dog Day being the unofficial leader of the group. Around the same time in 1991, the bigger body of Mommy Longlegs was created. Interestingly enough, her toy was made after her bigger body. This is due to the success she garnered in the factory, as the children loved her. Her commercial emphasized Playtime Co.'s patent